Where did the races come from? Science? Haba. We really don't know.
Ato pagingapilog, asa gikan ang tanang klase sa mga tao. Asa na gikan.
Well, we know where they started, but we don't know how the races began.
Kabalutag yun sa pagsugod, asa gasugod, pero ta kabalo kung giunsa pagsugod.
Now, we know that the Negro went, well, I should say this right. The Negro in the world generally is in Africa. We know that. And the Oriental generally is in the East, China, and all of the area. And we know that the white man, Caucasian people, generally are located in Europe and America.
Atong sabtan, nahibawan, kasagaran ng mga itong na tao, gikan din sa Afrika. Ang mga putiyon dayon, putiyon ganing mga insikon, mga pareha na to, nani ka mistiso, gikan sa China, sa East. O kana dayong mga puti, pareha na kong tapad, kasagaran dito gina sa Europe. Gikan, kanang mga klase ng mga...
Now if you go to Africa, to the middle part of Africa, you will find Negroes with the most distinctive anatomy.
Sa tunga sa Middle East, nadiha ang kasagaran ang mga itong na tao. Diyan ni mo maklaro, ikan ang mga itong.
Now I'm not making any funny. I'm not making fun of the Negro at all, but no one can deny that Negroes have a very distinct body. They have black skin. Now, I've got basically white skin with a little browner if I go out in the sun. That's not even close to a Negro. A Negro has black skin. I have seen them, their skin is shiny.
Wala ko nag-iga-iga o nagpakatawa para sa mga itumon, mga Negro, pero kasagaran na Negro, klaro din kayo. Kaya itong mga ng panit. So mailhan gini mo, maklaro gini mo sa ginang mga Negro, kay mga itong gina sila. Kasinaw, ang ilang mga panit sa akong nakitaan.
Negroes have large lips and kinky hair. That's shall we say, a pure Negro person.
Ang mga Negro pod, klaro kayo kay mga baga sa lips. Baga og lips na sila. Unya, kulot og buhok. Magaglips, kulot og buhok. Kaya magaglips kayo ka pa naman.
None of you are pure breeds, including myself. What? Go ahead.
Wala diha sa inyo. Klaro kayo nagikan sa mga ito.
Now, the Oriental, which is Shem, went east. And if you want the pure Oriental anatomy and distinctions of their body, you could go to Korea and Japan. And you would find them with slant eyes. The Koreans have the most exaggerated slant eyes, and they have a certain cast color to their body. Some people say it's yellow. Some people said they called the Indians in America redskins. Well, I see a little bit of yellow, but I don't see much red. It's more dark brown. But those are the distinctions of and features of an Oriental.
Siya miadto sa east niya padlong sa mga kainsikan dapit ug ang maklaro nimo diha nila nga mga hulagway mo nang binasa Korea sa mga Hapon, diba ang mga mata mga singkit na pikot. Unay mo ni maklaro niya ang ila ding mga panit rigang gaingon nga murag yelo og dihipa yelo na. Pero dili siya mo nga basta nga yelo sila tan-awon gikan sila kaputi. And
the Oriental also usually has straight black hair.
Kasagaran po sa mga Oriental na talapit, tinatawag o na ay mga buhok na straight, tapos itong.
So look in the mirror to see what you are.
Nawan yung madagway sa mirror ko sa amin kung sa anak na binong yung mga dagway kung wala dito sa Gipangingon na lahi mong planeta.
Now, Japheth went west, and if you want the pure, distinct features of the pure Japhethite, white man, shall we say, you could go to like Norway or Ireland, and you would find them with blonde or red hair, Ireland red, but blonde hair, light skin, and a normal nose. The Negro also has a nose that flares out, part of his distinct features.
Si Japheth niadto sa west o dito lapit sa mga Norway, mga mga dapita, tapos itawag sila o ang lamabo, mga blonde.
We have seen a pure in feature, I should say, Japhethite in Northern Ireland, and her skin is almost transparent. You could almost see the blood running in the veins, and she had very blonde hair.
Ipit-tapit, si Japheth ang mga kuhan dito, mga sunod sa iyang mga tao. Maklaro kung mo kumikan sa ka, light sa skin, maklaro doon mo mga dugo. Sabi no? Na daw. Doon ang madagay. Atubos po, mga itong dito, hapla ng mga ilong. So kita na binuntas may migro usahay.
Now, there's nothing wrong with any of those features. But just the fact that you could only have one of three of those, the other two are different from you, makes it difficult for you to socialize with the other two.
Karon kay kaniliging naglalahi naman itong mga itsura sa puti, sa itong, sa murag magdisod ta o pakig hugoy-hugoy sila. Di ba murag puti man lain man isagol kasi itong lain po sa murag nahawtag bari-bari yun na.
Okay, now go to Genesis chapter 10. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah. Remember that Noah and his wife, 3 sons and their 3 wives, got on the ark. Noah, his wife, his 3 sons and their 3 wives got off the ark. And the Bible tells us that from those 8 people came everything that we have on the earth today as far as humans is concerned. Noah and his wife had no more children, so everyone came from Shem, Ham, or Japheth and their reproductions.
Sukad sa baha, kita dahil tanang mga tao, gikan na kita tanang kang Shem and Japheth. Sila ginagkikan ng katwa. Wala naman ang anak utos si Noah.
Now the question is, when Ham, his son, Canaan, and we'll read beyond his son, but when Ham's son went to Africa, was he already black, or did he become black after he got there? When Shem's children went east toward China, did they have slant eyes and a yellow, reddish yellow color skin when they went there, or did they develop that while they were there? And the same with Japheth. And that is the origin of races. I'm telling you, nobody, including me, knows the answer to that question.
Ang pangutana mao ni. Kadiyang ningadto sila sa patang si Japheth sa Afrika. Dito sa China. Pag abot ko nag-Afrika na itong bakuno. Itong ningadto Afrika. O katupong ni Ari of China ng singkit bakunong mata kasago si Shem to. Singkit bakunong mata. So, ang pangutana, kung nganong nangauto ang nadagway sa mga taong naabot ng mga lugar, wa ta kabalo. Ang Bible, wa po nagsulti yun sa.
Now, with the development of technology, we now have DNA. I can't even pronounce what that stands for, but you know what it is, I think. From DNA, they can take one of your hairs or the perspiration on your thumb, and they can tell you what color eyes your great-great-grandfather had. Now, of course, you couldn't do that all through the Bible days, but now we have, or so they tell us, we have a very specific technological way of telling the past. We never had that before.
Karon kay grabe naman technology, naalay DNA, ang ginatawag og DNA, kuhaan lang kag imong buhok o singot sa imong magko, mahibaw ana unsay color daw sa mata sa imong pinaduluhan. Mahibaw ana daw. Wala ta anak nga technology sa panahon sa Bible, pero karon na ana daw na. Ano naka-bright ang tao.
Now we're going to read the date for coming off of the ark is 2349 BC. 2349 BC. In chapter 10 of Genesis, the date goes 2347. So we're looking at 100 years after they came off the ark. Go ahead.
So, pangsulti dito sa mga katuigan, ang naman na diya sa Bible o pang Bible na amana. So, atong hiskutan karon isa ka gatos, katuig ang milabay. So, kad nga nang naog sa arka.
Now God told them to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. So now the six that reproduced, Shem, Ham, and Japheth and their wives, came off the ark and began to reproduce and replenish the earth. So about 100 years later is what we have represented in Genesis chapter 10.
Sugo mo sa Ginoo nga pagpadaghan mo, so gikan dahil sa katuig, gikan sa pagnawag na sa arka, mao na ni resulta nato karong panahon na. Ang daghan na tabis ka resulta.
Genesis 10:1. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth were, it doesn't say were, but the sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyrus. And the sons of Gomer, so it goes a third generation, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah, the sons of Japhan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodadim. Now, I'm not going to labor and read any more specific names, but that gives you an idea of how the Bible puts down what's called chronology. Go ahead.
Hindi na nako, tagsa-tagsa, basa ni tanang mga ngalan na ning sa Bible, pero nakahatag ni idea kaninyo kung giunsa ang chronology, ang pagkasunod sa mga tao, kung nagdudugikan ang istorya asa.
Now, Chronicles has a very similar list to this. Chronicles is a very difficult book to read in the Bible because a lot of the chapters, whole chapters, are nothing but chronology, a list of names.
Chronicles, isud basahon, parehaan na ay istorya mga gikan imong mga kaliwatan, munang lisod basahon, kaya mga chapter nga puro rangalan, yung ahagikan.
So why is that important? Why is chronology? Why is the book of Chronicles important? Why is this list in Genesis important?
Anong importante man ang libro nga Chronicle na mga ngalan ng unta, ano po ninyo rin sa itong ibasa karon na may mga daghang ngalan, pangutana, anong importante?
It's because it's the only way we know how much time has passed. In other words, if you ask me, how long has it been since Genesis chapter 1? I would quickly answer you between 6,000 and 10,000 years. Not more than 10,000 years, probably, and maybe as little as 6,000 years. How can I say that? It's because someone better than me at math has taken the lives of these people in Chronicles and subtracted and gone back and gone back and gone back, and they've come up with a figure that Genesis chapter 1 was about 6,000 years ago of human history.
Anong importante man kay naman ko'y mas bright pa na kung nganing sulat, ilista ang mga kaliwatan, so nahibawan kung di ay pila na dahi katuig, nahibawan kung unsang tuigan ang sugod ang Genesis. So 6,000 years. Now,
science does not have a better system than the Bible. to tell time. And science just guesses. And they try to impress you with their big figures.
Science, ato lang bilin sa mga ini, grabe kabut-but. Wala naman tayo insakto nga giyon sanda pagsistima nga mahibuan gyud ang tuig. Unsa gid hagikan kay ilatang di pa sikatan nga pila ka katuigan di ba mo iskot na like billion years. Yeah. Bible 6,000 naman.
The Bible talks about hundreds and thousands of years. The word million is not in the Bible. It does say in Revelation 200,000, which you add that up and it comes up to 200 million. But the Bible doesn't use the term or the word million. Science loves million, loves billion better. And if they could get away with it, science would use trillion.
Ang Bible wala gagamit og pulong nga milyon, ang science grabe yun. Kailangan kita mo gamit og milyon, samot ng billion, samot ng trillion.
Verse 5. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands. Now, we're getting to a very important part of the Bible. Here it mentions Gentiles, but in chapter 11, Abraham is born. And in chapter 12, he and his seed are given promises to make them a very special and peculiar people, which are the Jews. But here, there ain't no Jews. Everybody is a Gentile until God states his covenant with Abraham, who was a Hebrew, but all of Abraham's seed become Jews. Or I should say, of all of the seed of Isaac become Jews. Right here, everybody's a Gentile. Keep that in mind.
Tanawa dire sa verse 5 na ipulong nga Gentiles. Wala biya ni na ang Jew wala pabiya ni. So tanan di ay tao puro Gentiles. Ang nahimo lang Jew salita katulang gikan sa kang Isaac. Kay di ba sa chapter 11 na tao man si Abraham, tapos pagka 12 na ano dahil Israelites, Jew. Pero wala ipulong nga Gentiles. Pero dili daan na Gentiles. So ato neboan kita sa una nga dili ka Jew, Gentile ka. So Gentile tanan sila ra day magihimo.
Now it's interesting because here we sit on one of the isles of the Gentiles reading about how God directed people to come and live and inhabit the isles of the Gentiles.
Dini gipakita sa Ginoo nga gipatanaw nga giunsaon pagpuyo hapit sa lugar sa mga isles.
Now, go ahead. Now, these isles of the Gentiles, the first thing that comes to my mind is Great Britain, England, Ireland, a whole bunch of islands that are very small in that group. There are islands in the Mediterranean off of the coast of Italy and Spain, and islands dotted through the Mediterranean Sea. And then, of course, if you go further, you come all the way to the Philippines, and you've got the isles of the Gentiles, which are populated by people that are a mixture of Ham, Shem, and Japheth.
Kanang pulo nga isle o isla nga kumanonaan katong dito sa England, sa Ireland, nga ay daghang mga isla-isla dito, tugol-tugol, hantod mao ni ang gipangpuy-an ni Ham, Shem, and Japheth nga nagkatibulaan hangtod nabutan sa Pilipinas, mga isla nga gipuy-an sa mga hintil nga parehanan ko.
Now look at the screen, and this will give you an idea of how it came about. Right here is Mount Ararat, where the ark landed. They got off the ark, and Shem, Ham, and Japheth began to migrate, go different places. And here is the yellow is the descendants of Japheth. And you see the yellow here and the yellow going up into Turkey and then into southern Europe and some of Russia over here, and it doesn't show anymore. But this is early on. This is the first 100 years. The green, you want to say something?
Inyo makita diri sa mapa nga si Japheth na sa ibabaw, Europe na dapit, mo nang diha mailan na yellow line, mo na siya diha ang area.
Shem is the green part, and Shem comes off the ark and begins to populate and begins to go east. This is east. China is over here. You can't see it, but it's over here. And Ham, which one of his sons or grandsons was Put, P-U-T, right there. And of course, this is the African continent, and they begin to populate here and some here. That's just an idea of where we are as far as the spreading out and the migration of Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
Idea ni kung di nagdikan kami si Ham, Shem, ug Japheth, si Ham na adri sa Africa, nga nahimong itong, kani si Shem, nag-insik, sa mga insik na dapit, si Japheth, wala sa mga European.
Verse 5, Genesis 10. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands. Every one watcheth after his tongue. Now this is a little tricky. This verse actually took place further along in chapter 11. But it's recorded first that it happened right here in chapter 10 and verse 5, after their tongues, after his tongue. Now, you understand that these sons spread out. Look one more time, just to make sure you understand. They got off the ark here. Shem began to migrate this way. He's also at the same time reproducing and producing other families. and they begin to settle, but it takes time. They divide up into tribes, and then they form their own governments, and they become a nation, but they're migrating. That's Japheth right there, the yellow. Then Shem is the green. Here, they begin to go east, and Japheth is the yellow. I don't know if I got that mixed up. Put or Ham is the pink, and they begin to migrate in 3 different directions. Then time goes on. They migrate further, until you've got the pure Negro in the southern central part of Africa. You've got the pure Shemite in Korea and Japan, and you've got the pure Japhethite in Norway and Great Britain, up in that area there.
Sa diyan, nagbulag-bulag sila pagnawag sa arka. Si Shem, o na ang nangahimong mga insect, Koreano o Hapon, at ibalik, si Ham na lagom, na itong, o si Japheth, nahimong English, dapat Norwegian.
Up to this point, they're all Gentiles. And also up to this point, and up to the point of chapter 11, they all speak one language. What language is that? Anybody guess?
What was the language? Hebrew.
No way.
Good guess. I can't prove it, you can't disprove it, but the language was probably Hebrew. That's God's language. He hasn't got any problem with any language, but that seems to be what we will be speaking in heaven, because that's the Lord's dwelling place.
Yan, nagbulag-bulag sila, pangutana, ay sarang kabok ang gigamit nga lingwahe. Pangutana, unsa daw nga lingwahe. Munti pastor ay Ilonggo.
Now, I've got a little jump on you there. I spent a year studying Hebrew, and I made it a point in my mind to forget it just as quickly as I learned it. So I can't even give you the whole alphabet of Hebrew. The reason that happened with me, I'm not very proud of it, because I did labor and made an A in Hebrew class. But when I figured out that it was a waste of time to study Greek and Hebrew in order to figure out how God preserved His Word, I forgot those languages and concentrated on English, because English is where God preserved His Word in the King James Bible. I believe that with all my heart.
Santo o bright kayo ko ang pulong na Hebrew. Kaya na nakaibya, ibig ang ilaha sa tao 100. So, bright kayo. Pero ako nang gikalimtan kay gumikan o tunan mo ng Hebrew o Greek. Tama na sa Bible school. Akong nakita nga walay pulos. Kay gato ko nga ang King James Bible, nag-concentrate ko sa English, kay gato ko nga ang King James Bible, mao ang i-preserve nga English word sa pulong sa Ginoo. Manang din ako kay libog-libog na. Manang nakalimot ako dayon katong sa kuwang Hebrew nga naka-ikot.
Now we're studying Genesis. Go to verse 6. Genesis 10:6. And the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan. And then it tells their kids. And in verse 8, there's an important man that makes his first appearance. Cush begat Nimrod. Now, Nimrod, you need to know a little bit about him. There's not that much to know about Nimrod, but let's read about Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. So he's known worldwide, at least in this world. Everybody knew of Nimrod. He's a type or a picture of Antichrist. Very strong, very famous. Go ahead.
Nimrod, ikan sa kanghang, sikat tayo. Nahimo siyang nailan sa tibok kalibutan. Pero type lagi siya ni Antichrist. Grabe siya kakusgan, sikat, o naitay mahibawaan niya gamay lang.
Now the Bible we learned in Genesis 6, the Bible says these giants that were a product of angels and female humans, these giants were men of renown, and they were rulers. But there isn't one that was ruler of the world. Nimrod is really the first man mentioned that has the power and strength to rule the world. And he does. Look in verse 9. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. Read verse 10. And the beginning of his kingdom is Babel. Go ahead.
Si Nimrod sa atong nahibawan sa Genesis 5 na dunay mga mighty men, dunay mga higanting nga mga tao, mga produkto sa diyang ang anghel nakikminyo o mga tao. So ang tawag sila mga sikat, renowned, sikat kay sila. So isa ni si Nimrod, tingnan siya dito, mao ni nga naadiri atong mabasa nga naghari siya. Wala pa ilain nag-unag hari-hari aning kalibutan kani pa si Nimrod aning panahon.
Now what I want you to know about him was that he was a mighty man, a mighty hunter, and that he was the first world ruler, and that he came from Ham, and that he started the city of Babel. He also builded, in verse 11, Nineveh. I want you to know Nimrod, Babel, and Nineveh, and that he was a mighty man and a mighty hunter.
Si Nimrod atong mahibawan nga kusgan, sikat, siya nahimong unang leader sa kalibutan. Iya siya may nagtukod sa Babel o sa Nineveh.
Now, we're only 100 years out of the ark, about. So everybody moved from Mount Ararat, look on the screen. Everybody, they're all Gentiles, they all have one voice, one tongue. And they began to move this way into the level, plain country in here. And this is where Babel get started. This is Nineveh. And Babel is here. I'm sorry. Babel, Nineveh, and the plains of Shinar, right here.
Nadiri dapita inyong nakitaan diya sa screen, gisulti dapita ng mga lugar Babel, Shinar na diya sa Shem dapit.
Nimrod, mighty hunter, first world ruler, Babylon, and Nineveh. Very important.
Importante kayo ng inyong matiman-an, si Nimrod, may una nga naghari sa kalibutan, o siya'y nagtukod sa Babel o sa Nineveh.
And look in verse 25. Genesis 10:25. And unto Eber were born two sons. The name of the one was Peleg. Now watch it. For in his days was the earth divided. His brother's name was Joktan. Peleg. In his days was the earth divided. Think about that. What does that mean? It could mean several different things. It could mean it's a prediction or a prophecy concerning tongues, and people began to divide according to their tongue.
So, unsa kuno ipasabot aning ang kalibutan nato nga. So, tingali, pwede na mahimong propesiya nga diin bulag ang tao nato nga ang kalibutan gumikan sa pinulungan.
I've heard it taught that it means geographic division. And you've got 7 continents and a lot of water, seas and oceans in between. And you've got North America, South America, Antarctica, you've got Africa, Europe, and Asia, and Australia. And they're divided. If you look at a world map, which I'm not prepared to show you, you could see where the earth is divided geographically.
Atong nakita nga karon sa mapa nabulag-bulag yun ang kalibutan. Di ay mga yuta, kanting dagat, so mga kahimo na dayon mga continent karon ng panahon na.
I want you to know Peleg, and that in his days was the earth divided. It could also mean racial. You've got the Negro, you've got the Oriental, and you've got the Caucasian. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. That's a division. Now you also have one more that I can see real quickly here, is that in the next chapter, chapter 12, you've got the Jew. So you would have Jew and Gentile as a division. Could mean any or some of all of this. But it's an interesting verse, and it only says it one time in the Bible.
So, kung gusto na ako ng inyong matiman-an si Peleg, yung mahinungdan nga nagingon nga bulag, natunga ang kalibutan. So pwede po na sa racial, dili racial masisisid, race ang imuhang kaliwatan, bulag-bulag.
Verse 31, these are the sons of Shem, after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, after their nations. These are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations, in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. Nations began to be formed, which could be another division. Anyway, in Peleg's day, the earth was divided. And I want you to know, division is associated with Peleg.
Gusto na ko nga inyong hinumduman nga dito nagsugod ang pagkabulag-bulag, katibulaag, ang kalibutan na utro, nag-divide. Pwede po nga ma-divide sa Gentile o sa Jew, kaya sa 12 na naman ang mga Jew o Israelita. So pwede po nga ang mga kaliwatan na divide, kakos o division. So diri kasugod sa panahon ni Peleg.
Now, it's interesting to know that at this time, there's no mention of any personal relationship with God in connection with anybody from Ham or Japheth until the New Testament. Nobody had a personal relationship with God at this time.
Aning panahon na atong matanawan, atong mahinumduman nga walay relasyon ang mga tao diya sa Ginoo, walay dimension, wala gisulti diya.
It's also interesting to know they didn't have newspapers, television, radio, communications like that. But Noah lived until Abraham was 58 years old. So it's possible that Noah was able to communicate the whole story of the flood to Abraham, and Abraham was old enough to understand it, remember it, and pass it on. In fact, you only have 7 generations between Adam and Moses wrote it down. So it's possible, theoretically, that Moses could have interviewed or communicated with people that were sons and daughters of the people that actually experienced the flood, or saw maybe the Garden of Eden. You could talk to Adam's grandson and get the story on what it was like. So I know that the scripture is inspired by God, but it's not out of reason to see that it's accurate because there was so few people involved in actually writing it down.
So aning panahon na kung imong tan-awon, kaniday kunong panahon na naapsan pa ni Noah si Abraham, 58 ang edad ni Abraham. Aning panahon na nga buwig pa si Noah. So mao atong panahon na kay wala pa man to yung mga newspaper o may mga radyo. So mao tingali ito nga nahibaw-an ni Abraham ang istorya sa mga katigulangan kay naapsan niya si Noah yang niistoryahan si Abraham sa nahitungod sa dunok, sa flood. Kunya kay may mga kaapuhan si Adan, sila Noah naman gapon tulog. Nga istoryahan bahin sa Eden, mo inangar pasapasa na kay Marites naman itong style dito sa una. Ewan ko may radyo. Pasapat ka lang.
Along with that, Shem, Noah's son, was still alive during Joseph's lifetime. He lived that long. So these true stories could have been passed down with like one person, two people involved. We tried it for an experiment one time out here, and we took 20 people or close to it. I think you were part of this. And I told somebody something in their ear, and I wrote it down, and they looked at it, a very simple sentence. And I said, now I want you exactly to say the same thing to the person, to another person. They say it to another person, another person, another person. Were you here? And when the 20th person heard it, they had to tell what they heard. Nobody, you're whispering in the ear, so nobody could keep track of it. And I wrote it down, what I said to him, and he agreed that that was what I said. And by the time it got to the end, it wasn't even understandable. So that's a kind of a party game you can play, but it's true. The more people that communicate it, the worse it gets all out of kilter. So that's my proof to you tonight that the Bible is correct. Yes, because it was preserved by God, number one. But number two, looking at it logistically or logically, it was able to be translated from only maybe a few people the stories were told.
Sama sa itong gidula, isulat ang isulti sa unang tao, taman sa ika-20, pag-uot sa 20, na di na mao, tumo ng proof nga kaning Biblia, isulat yun sa Ginoo, gi-preserve yun sa Ginoo. Kaya man outro.
All right. John, dismiss us in prayer. Got 10 minutes for CR.